When people used to ask me if I'm Jewish, I'd say, well, my parents are Jewish. It's funny because I've heard so many people with the same line, and so many stories of people on their way to India or just traveling around, but for some reason stopping in Israel first and discovering Livnot or Livnot. So how do I feel now? Jewish.
When the pioneers came to the Promised Land, one of their main motives was Livnot ulehibanot, to build and to be built, Jews rebuilding the land with their own hands, and in the process rebuilding themselves. Livnot ulehibanot in Tzfat updates that ideal with a unique work and study program where English-speaking Jews between the ages of 20 and 30 literally dig for their roots. The old city of Tzfat is a perfect location, situated on top of a mountain with breathtaking views. 400 years ago, Tzfat was also the cultural center of the Jewish world, contributing great rabbis such as Joseph Caro, author of the Shulchan Aruch, and the mystical Kabbalist, the Ari. Today, however, much of the city lies buried under rock and rubble. To this setting come 20 participants every 3 months. They spend 4 hours in the mornings excavating and restoring old ruins, and 4 hours in the afternoon studying Judaism, history, and Hebrew, all the while living as a group, cooking their own meals and sharing in the chores. Their one common feature is that almost all have had little or no formal Jewish education and no strong sense of Jewish identity.
Well, I mean, we knew we were Jewish. We didn't have a Christmas tree, but I never particularly sought out Jewish friends, and I never had a Jewish boyfriend. It didn't bother me. I never thought much about Jewish identity in the States. To tell you the truth, I was much more interested in existentialism.
I really didn't know anything. I mean, I thought a bris was like a cut of beef. I don't know. I thought Yom Kippur was a day of remembrance for the Yom Kippur War.
Before I came to Israel, I just broken up with my non-Jewish fiancé. He used to come over on holidays, and we'd laugh because he knew more about Judaism than I did.
It's always really haunted me about the Holocaust. That were I alive in that time, I wouldn't have had the choice to say if I were Jewish or if I wanted to explore my roots. I guess I felt Jewish because of the Holocaust. But as I grew older, I couldn't just base it on that. I really felt I needed a more positive motivation.
Then new immigrants, Aaron and Miriam Botzer, were living in Tzfat and founded Livnot ulehibanot in 1980. They wanted to design an alternative volunteer framework with Jewish studies.
When I think what makes someone want to be tied to the Jewish people, it's not just learning a few lines of Hebrew. People learn a few lines of Spanish and French. It doesn't make them want to be tied to the Spanish people or the French people. But by teaching them their heritage and the richness of their tradition, that makes them want to be involved and to learn more. There are a few thousand Jewish youth who come to Israel every year without any set goal or commitment, who should have as complete an experience as they can out of Israel. The program we founded is for individuals at the stage when they're beginning to ask, who am I as a Jew, and whether it is important for me to continue as a Jew.
The day starts around 6 in the morning with work. Every program we end up working on a different project, and recently we've been rebuilding an old synagogue to use as one of our classrooms. We cleared out all the rubble, rebuilt the walls, poured and built all the arches, and finally we put on a concrete roof.
I never thought that I was going to come to Israel to mix cement, but there's something very rewarding about the concept of rebuilding the old cities of Israel, of taking the same exact stones and putting them together in our own way. It makes you feel like you're a part of Israel, or maybe Israel becomes a part of you.
The work also gives you time to discuss what you're learning in class. I remember seeing these two women taking out the garbage once, and on their way, there they were talking about religion and God, and on their way back they were still talking about it.
It's a real team effort. Sometimes everybody wants to get into the act.
We've also rebuilt some of the alleyways in Tzfat, and we volunteered to clean and paint some old people's apartments in the community.
I'm a very idealistic person, And there has to be motives behind motives behind motives for me to be satisfied. And there were definitely all of those motives working in Svat.
While most of the group is working outside, 3 people a day stay in to take care of all the cleaning and cooking, at the same time learning how to keep a kosher kitchen in a very practical way. After lunch, classes begin, including courses in Jewish concepts, Torah, holidays, Jewish history, Zionism, and Hebrew. There are also evening speakers, Jewish-related movies, and study groups, all the time dealing with subjects that are basic and controversial.
What were the factors that motivated the Jews to create a Jewish state, and what are the challenges of Zionism today?
I'd like to discuss, do we feel that the Jewish people is different than other peoples? If yes, in what ways? If no, in what ways?
People often ask me how it is that I am both an observant Jew and a scientist. I seem to think the two are in conflict. For example, how can I accept the story in the Bible of the creation, and at the same time the account that any scientist will give of the age of the universe or the age of the world?
Are women really only different, but nonetheless equal to men, or is that just something men tell us?
Well, first of all, no one takes for granted that you believe anything, so the discussions are really wide open. The teaching's a dialogue, not just a lecture like at a university. You get a feeling the teachers really care.
After dealing with Jewish philosophy, concepts of God, spirituality, and morals, I really like waking up and having to lift stones, mix cement, and build walls.
Livnot is the kind of place where you can get all your basic questions answered and be surrounded by people who know as little as you do, so that you're not embarrassed by what you don't know.
The stress in community is so important. I remember one morning there were just 2 cottage cheeses left for breakfast. It was silly. There was only enough for half a spoonful each. So I made an announcement that there's only 2 left, and when I cleaned up, I couldn't believe it. There was still half a cottage cheese left. So I ate it.
In a way, the sense of community really only begins when the program is over. And there's a whole group of Livnoters who get together regularly in Jerusalem and the States, often meeting for Shabbat.
I always kept the Sabbath, just never in the same way, and never on Saturday.
I think when you're in Tzfat on a Shabbat, and you're singing songs in the same town where people actually wrote those songs, watching the same mountains and the same sunsets, it really makes it special.
There's also the family Shabbat, where group members join families in the community, many of whom are English-speaking and from backgrounds similar to the participants.
You know, it really does put away a lot of your stereotypes. Religious Jews used to freak me out. They were just so weird. I'm from Berkeley, California, and I know what weird is.
But when you go to the families, you see Judaism living, and it really gives you a much deeper understanding of it.
You get close to the kids, too. I learned you can pick up a baby and it doesn't break.
All through the program we take hikes, but near the end there's the Tiyul, a 3-day walk literally across the top of the country, from the Sea of Galilee to the Mediterranean. That's nearly 100 kilometers.
Anyone who walks that definitely feels like a part of the land is theirs. They worked hard for it.
And when you realize it's a Jewish country, you start relating to it all as a part of yourself. The mountains are yours, the valleys are yours. And then you visit an ancient synagogue and realize that maybe 2,000 years ago, your ancestors had a similar feeling in the same place.
To date, several hundred students have gone through the Livnot Ulehibanot course, and almost all of them today are involved with being Jewish. A number have changed their college majors at university to Jewish studies. Others are teaching in Sunday schools part-time. In many cases, the same Sunday school they stopped attending because it didn't say anything to them. Some stay in Israel, but most eventually go back to their old environments to weigh things out, becoming more involved within a Jewish community. They look for Jewish social groups and participate in Hillel activities on campus. Whatever approach they take, they bring a new knowledge of Jewish moral values and a commitment to Israel to their lives. Because of its lasting effect on participants, syndicated Jewish columnist Carl Alpert called Livnot Ulehibanot probably one of the most effective investments ever made by the Jewish Agency. And Menachem Lustigman, director of the Center for Ulpanim and Counseling for Young Adults of the Jewish Agency, called Livnot Ulehibanot the most successful Jewish Agency program in Israel for English-speaking Jewish youth.
And so one day I came to Tzfat. My friends back home were worried I'd get brainwashed. I did in a way, in that I washed my brain and out of it grew some roots in the beginning, and I don't feel so different anymore.
I think I've finally recognized the love so many people have for Zion. I'm not sure how I'm going to practice what I learned in Tzfat or incorporate Judaism into my life, but the thing is, it's important to me now, and it wasn't before. I feel very proud that I'm a link in the chain.
Livnot Lehibanot opened a door to a world that I didn't even know existed.
I am Jewish. So are my parents, and so will be my grandchildren.